Ever wonder what you'd eat if your fridge stopped working for 6 months? Victorians lived that reality every winter. No refrigeration, no supermarkets, no fresh produce shipped from warmer climates. When November arrived, the food you had was the food you'd get until spring. Run out early, you went hungry. Victorian families developed an entire winter food system based on ingredients that could survive months of storage in cold cellars and unheated pantries. Let's explore the forgotten foods that kept Victorian families fed through the coldest months. Salt cod. Dried salt cod was winter protein for millions of Victorian families. The fish was caught in summer, heavily salted, and dried until rock hard. Properly prepared salt cod could last years without refrigeration. The preparation required planning. Salt cod needed soaking in multiple changes of water for 24 to 48 hours before cooking. The fish swelled back to nearly original size, though the texture remained firm and slightly chewy. Victorian recipe books include dozens of preparations: boiled with egg sauce, baked in milk with onions, made into fish cakes with potato. The strong, salty flavor dominated any dish, becoming a taste associated with winter itself. Working-class families relied on salt cod heavily during winter months. A large dried fish purchased in autumn provided multiple meals throughout the season at an affordable price. Children grew up associating the smell of soaking salt cod with approaching dinner time. The smell during cooking was notoriously strong. Victorian household guides suggest open windows despite the cold. Neighbors knew when someone was cooking salt cod several houses away. The nutrition was legitimate: protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and minerals that added crucial variety to winter diets, dominated by bread and root vegetables. For families who couldn't afford fresh meat, salt cod provided essential protein through the coldest months. Dried peas and beans. Dried legumes were Victorian winter staples. Peas, beans, and lentils stored indefinitely in dry conditions and provided protein when fresh food vanished. Split pea soup appeared on winter tables constantly. Thick, filling, and cheap, it required only dried peas, water, and perhaps a ham bone for flavor. Victorian families made huge pots that lasted several days, reheating portions as needed. Beans needed overnight soaking and hours of cooking, but they stretched winter supplies considerably. A small amount of dried beans swelled to provide a substantial meal. Combined with bread and root vegetables, beans made a complete dinner that kept families fed through hard times. The preparation was time-consuming, but provided welcome warmth in cold houses. Victorian women spent hours tending cooking pots, stirring and adding water as needed. The steam from simmering beans added moisture to dry winter air. Dried peas and beans separated classes. Upper-class households ate them occasionally as fashionable French preparations, while working-class families ate them from necessity. The same food carried entirely different social meanings depending on who served it. The nutritional value was significant. Legumes provide protein, fiber, iron, and various vitamins. Victorian families eating dried peas and beans regularly through winter received better nutrition than those who couldn't afford them. Storage issues occasionally arose with weevils infesting improperly stored supplies. Victorian household guides recommend inspecting beans carefully before cooking, picking out insects and damaged specimens one by one. Suet puddings. Suet, hard fat from around animal kidneys, was fundamental to Victorian winter cooking. Suet puddings provided cheap, filling, warming food that used minimal ingredients. The basic preparation involved mixing suet with flour and water, then boiling in a cloth for hours. The result was dense, heavy pudding that sat in the stomach for hours. Sweet versions included raisins or jam, savory versions had onions or herbs. Every household had variations passed down through generations. The warming effect was real. High-fat foods generate more body heat during digestion. In poorly heated Victorian homes, a suet pudding for dinner meant feeling warmer through the evening and into the night. Children often ate sweet pudding as their main meal. Filling and cheap, it kept hungry children satisfied when other food was scarce. The texture was heavy and slightly greasy, but hunger made almost anything palatable. Upper-class households made elaborate versions with candied fruits, spirits, and expensive spices. Working-class families made basic versions with whatever they could afford. Christmas pudding was essentially suet pudding elevated to special occasion status. The preparation required 3 to 5 hours of boiling, demanding advance planning and fuel. In working-class homes where both parents worked, preparing suet pudding meant starting it before dawn or dedicating an entire day off to cooking. Root vegetables in sand. Carrots, parsnips, turnips, and beets survived winter stored in boxes of sand in cool cellars. The sand prevented moisture loss and protected against frost and rot. Victorian families harvested root vegetables in late autumn, selected the best specimens, and carefully layered them in sand. Done properly, these vegetables remained edible until spring. Done poorly, the entire winter supply rotted within weeks. Household management guides provided detailed instructions. Each vegetable required specific sand moisture levels and temperatures. Carrots needed drier conditions than beets. Parsnips actually improved with cold exposure, becoming sweeter after frost. The stored vegetables gradually deteriorated. By February or March, carrots became rubbery and sprouted. Turnips turned woody. Families used the best vegetables first, saving questionable ones for soups where texture mattered less. Root vegetables in sand represented winter wealth. A full cellar meant security through the cold months. An empty cellar by January meant hardship and dependence on expensive market purchases. The poor often lacked proper storage. Families in urban tenements had no cellars or cool storage spaces. They bought root vegetables in small quantities at winter markets, and paying higher prices for produce others had successfully stored. If you're still here after learning about vegetables stored in sand, subscribe for more Victorian survival tactics. Pickled everything. Victorian families pickled whatever vegetables summer provided. Cabbage, cucumbers, onions, cauliflower, walnuts, eggs. If it could be preserved in vinegar, Victorians pickled it. The preparation consumed late summer and early autumn. Women spent weeks pickling using family recipes passed through generations. The sharp vinegar smell filled houses for days during pickling season, announcing to the neighborhood that winter preparations were underway. Pickled vegetables provided winter nutrition and flavor. The vinegar prevented scurvy, the vegetables provided vitamins, and the strong taste broke monotony in diets otherwise dominated by bland stored foods. Victorian pickle recipes used far more vinegar and salt than modern versions. The preservation had to last 6 months minimum without any refrigeration. The taste was intensely sharp and salty by modern standards, but Victorians expected that. Pickled cabbage, sauerkraut, appeared regularly and provided fermentation benefits Victorians observed without understanding. Families eating regular pickled cabbage stayed healthier through winter, though no one knew why. Class distinctions appeared even in pickles. Upper-class households made delicate pickles with exotic spices imported at considerable expense. Working-class families made basic vinegar pickles with cheap ingredients and whatever spices they could afford. Potted meat. Potting preserved meat by pounding cooked meat into paste, packing it into jars, and sealing with clarified butter. The butter layer excluded air, preventing spoilage for months. Victorian kitchens prepared potted meats in autumn, when meat was more available and affordable. Beef, pork, tongue, game, anything could be potted. The meat cooked until falling apart, then pounded with spices and fat until smooth. The spices masked any slight deterioration and made the preserved meat more interesting to eat. Properly potted meat lasted months in cool storage. Families opened jars as needed throughout winter, spreading the preserved meat on bread or adding it to other dishes for flavor and protein. The texture was paste-like and heavily spiced. Common spices included mace, pepper, and cloves, strong flavors that held up through months of storage. Potted meat represented winter luxury for working-class families where meat was expensive and scarce during cold months. Having potted meat meant you'd planned ahead and could afford meat during the abundant seasons. Upper-class households potted game and expensive cuts of meat. Working-class families potted cheaper cuts and organ meats. The preservation method worked regardless of meat quality, though the final taste varied considerably. The butter seal occasionally failed, allowing air in and dangerous bacteria to develop. Victorian families learned to check carefully before eating, but food poisoning from spoiled potted meat occurred regularly enough to be a recognized danger. Dried fruit. Dried apples, pears, and plums provided winter sweetness and nutrition. Victorian families dried fruit in warm kitchens during harvest, storing it for winter use. Sliced fruit spread on racks dried in days using late summer heat. The resulting leathery pieces lasted months. Dried fruit went into winter puddings, pies, and compotes. Soaked overnight, the fruit plumped back to near original size. The concentrated vitamins and minerals provided nutrition otherwise missing from winter diets. Children eating dried fruit regularly stayed healthier, though Victorians didn't understand why. The poor couldn't always afford dried fruit. Fresh fruit in summer was already expensive for working-class families. Dried fruit appeared occasionally as treats rather than regular winter food. Oats and porridge. Oatmeal was Victorian winter breakfast across all classes, though preparation and accompaniments varied dramatically. Scottish-style porridge required overnight soaking and slow morning cooking. The result was smooth, creamy, and filling. Eaten with milk when available, plain when not. Working-class families ate thin porridge daily. A bag of oatmeal purchased in autumn provided breakfast for months at minimal cost. The porridge was often thin, stretched with extra water to make supplies last longer. Upper-class households ate richer porridge made with milk and cream, served with sugar, honey, or preserved fruit. Hot porridge provided internal warmth that lasted hours in poorly heated homes. In houses heated only by small fires or not at all, starting the day with hot food made a real difference to body temperature and energy levels. Oats provided solid nutrition, fiber, protein, and minerals. Victorian families eating daily porridge received better nutrition than those who couldn't afford even this basic food. Regional variations existed and mattered culturally. Scottish families treated porridge preparation with near-religious seriousness, following specific traditional methods. English households were more casual about the process. Hard cheese. Aged hard cheese survived winter without refrigeration. Cheddar and Lancashire kept for months in cool storage, providing winter protein and fat. The cheese continued aging during storage, becoming sharper. By March, autumn cheese was intensely flavored, sometimes unpleasantly strong, but remained edible. Working-class families rationed cheese carefully. A small wedge grated over vegetables or melted on bread made bland winter meals more palatable. Upper-class households kept entire cheese wheels in their cellars. Cheese mold required careful attention. Spots could be cut away, but unchecked mold spread through the entire piece. The combination of cheese with other winter staples provided complete nutrition. Salted butter. Butter preservation required heavy salting. Victorian families made or purchased butter in summer when milk was abundant, then salted it heavily for winter storage. The salt level made preserved butter nearly inedible, spread directly on bread. Victorian cooks rinsed salted butter before use, reducing the salty taste. Winter butter tasted noticeably different from fresh. The preservation was essential. Butter prices soared in winter when cows produced less milk. Salted butter worked fine in cooking, baked into bread, used for frying, melted over vegetables. Upper-class households used fresh butter year-round, while working-class families used heavily salted butter or went without. Smoked fish. Smoking preserved fish for winter use. Herring, mackerel, and other oily fish were smoked until dried, then stored in cool, dry places. Smoked herring, kippers, appeared on Victorian breakfast tables regularly. Split, smoked, and dried, they needed only brief grilling. The strong, smoky flavor filled houses during preparation. Fresh herring was delicate and mild, but smoking transformed it into something that would last months. Poorer families relied on smoked fish for affordable winter protein. Red herring, heavily smoked until nearly black, lasted even longer and was so strongly flavored that small amounts sufficed for seasoning entire dishes. The nutrition held up well. Smoking preserved the fish oils that provided crucial omega-3 fatty acids. Stored apples. Certain apple varieties stored successfully through winter if handled properly. Late-season apples picked carefully and stored in cool, dark conditions lasted until spring. Victorian households wrapped each apple individually in paper, then packed them in barrels. The paper prevented rot from spreading. Regular inspection removed spoiling apples. The stored apples gradually changed. Crisp autumn apples became softer and sweeter by midwinter, with flesh turning grainy and brown-tinged. Apple storage marked winter progression. Each inspection revealed more spoiled fruit, and running out before spring meant going without until the next harvest. The poor lacked storage space and purchased individual apples at winter markets when affordable. Late winter, apples were expensive and often partially rotted with bad spots cut away before sale. Bacon and ham. Salted and smoked pork was fundamental Victorian winter meat. An autumn pig provided bacon and ham that fed families through winter. The preservation process took weeks. Fresh pork was salted, sometimes smoked, then hung in cool, dry places. The meat darkened and hardened, developing concentrated flavor. Victorian working-class families built their winter diet around bacon. A small piece flavored a pot of beans or cabbage. Bacon fat served for cooking. Ham lasted longer than bacon and was reserved for special occasions or late winter when other supplies dwindled. The salt content was extreme. Victorian preserved pork needed soaking to remove excess salt before cooking. Working-class bacon came from any available pig parts, while upper-class households had multiple hams from high-quality pigs. Marrow bones. Beef marrow bones were winter treasures. The bones cost little, lasted indefinitely, and provided rich, nutritious marrow for winter cooking. Butchers sold bags of bones for pennies. Victorian families bought them in autumn, storing them until needed. A stockpot of bones simmered for days, providing broth that formed the base of countless winter meals. The marrow itself was eaten spread on toast or added to puddings for richness. Victorian cookbook recipes assume marrow bone availability throughout winter cooking. A good set of bones could be used multiple times. The first boiling extracted marrow and rich broth. Subsequent boilings produced weaker but still useful stock. Street vendors sold roasted marrow bones to workers, providing hot, fatty food on cold days. Treacle and molasses. Thick, dark, cheap sweeteners lasted indefinitely and provided winter calories and iron. Treacle and molasses appeared in countless Victorian winter recipes. Treacle pudding, treacle tart, dense, dark, filling foods. Working-class families used treacle extensively. Spread on bread, stirred into porridge, baked into simple cakes. The sweetness made bland winter food more palatable. The iron content provided unexpected nutritional benefit, though Victorian doctors didn't understand why treacle seemed to improve health. Treacle's association with poverty made it less popular in upper-class households. The sweetener never spoiled. Treacle purchased in autumn remained perfectly edible the following summer, making it reliable when most food deteriorated through winter. Victorian winter food was about survival through months when fresh food vanished. Salt, smoke, sugar, and cold storage transformed summer abundance into winter supplies. Which of these winter foods did you eat? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this look at Victorian winter survival, subscribe for more stories about how people really lived in the past. Thanks for watching.